Very good evening to all the attendees today. This is another topic in the financial planning series, which is for doctors. So, like this, in our series of right wing talk, we'll be bringing up topics and suggestions and tips, which will help each aspects of your personal financial plan. So today, what we are going to see is how can you protect your practice and your personal assets in cases of, when it comes to risk management. So, what are the objectives of today's session is throughout this session and at the end of this session, one should be able to overcome the misconceptions of whether it is asset protection or whether it is risk management or whether it is buying an insurance product. So what all misconceptions one could have, we'll try to burst those myths and see beyond what we can do best. And what are the effective tools, techniques, and strategies for asset protections, and how one can use it in a very, very cost effective and easy and objective oriented way to protect one's practice and assets. And how do you be aware? This is all about creating awareness in one way. The sessions that we are bringing up, especially for doctors. We see that a lot of us are, becoming easy targets for mis-selling of products and things like that. So how to be aware when it comes to risk management, insurance, and having protection tools. So how to be aware of not getting missold. So that is the whole objective of creating this session today. Firstly, to understand what are the risks that a doctor or a medical professional faces, whether it is professional or personal, and what are the tools, techniques, and strategies one can have to protect the practice, the assets, whether it is business or personal, and what strategies can be used, and how to come out of your misconceptions, and how to be aware of mis-sellings in the future. So what are some of the misconceptions? See, it all begins with planning, right? So many times people feel, especially doctors feel that, only if I have a lot of wealth, only if I have a lot of assets, it makes sense to have a certain kind of a planning or, asset protection strategies and things like that. But that is a myth, a very, very big myth. Even with whatever, one has, planning is very important. Planning and the right kind of tools, right kind of instruments to have, whether it is investment products, whether it is retirement planning, whether it is insurance, you should have the right kind of a things to protect you in a 360-degree way. It doesn't matter whether you are very wealthy, whether you don't have liquid money, or whether all your assets are into real estate. It doesn't matter. So what one has to come out of that misconception. So we are going to see today how asset protection and protecting your practice can be done with whatever you have. And sometimes people also feel that it is just one if one wants to hide from creditors, for example, if you have a loan, creditor is a person to whom person or an institution to whom you owe back money, right? So asset protection is a strategy only if you have big loans or creditors, and if you want to avoid taxes. That is also a very, very wrong myth. So asset protection comes in place when you want your hard-earned money, your hard-earned assets to be treated and managed in a way how you want to, want it to happen, rather than just leaving it to go with the flow kind of an approach. Jo hoga jab hoga dekha jayega kind of a thing. So that is also a wrong conception. So it is all about creating a holistic and a comprehensive plan to protect and safeguard and preserve and grow whatever you have built across your career, across your lifespan, starting from your savings, your investments, your assets, and how to protect yourself and your family from potential threats, risks, including lawsuits, divorce, or business failures and things like that. So lastly, one also feels that yes, I have insurance, I have all kinds of insurance, or two, three insurance, which is taking care of the risk element for me, and I think I'm good with it. I don't need anything beyond me insurance policy. That is also a very, very wrong misconception. So let's see, let's go forward and take it step by step and look at what we are trying to achieve by today's session. So it always begins with a financial plan. Whatever one does, whether it is a professional, whether it is a salaried person, it doesn't matter. Your financial plan is a one living document, which has to keep reviewing and upgrading and updating and keep looking at things, whether at from time to time, whether all the aspects are taken care or not. So in the elements, in the top important elements of financial planning, risk management becomes one of risk management is at the heart of the financial plan, I would say. That is because whatever we are doing, whatever hard work we are doing, the objective is to protect and preserve whatever we have created, um, uh, taking so much of a pain, putting in so much of effort and time, and where we want our family and our children to enjoy the things in the way that we want to, right? So risk management becomes the heart of it. So today, this topic that we have chosen is pertaining to risk management, and how can insurance be a part of risk management and not entirely your a thing. So now it's a very big question that always comes when we are creating a webinar for doctors. So a lot of times people don't understand why it is important, why it is different for doctors. It is so for everybody else, right? But why it is important for doctors? So these are the some of the risks or elements, I would say, professional risks, which are very very subjective, and especially when we come to doctors, narrowing it down to doctors. I'm sorry. Yeah. So these are some of the risks which makes it very different for the doctors, and our approach as financial advisors changes and depends on these elements when we are trying to address it with our clients, right? So what are the professionals risks that doctors and medical professionals face? Is one is there is violence against doctors, right? If there is a medical negligence case, and things like that. So we see that a lot of the times patients and or their relatives get into a physical threat kind of a thing with the doctors. We have seen so many cases every day, in and out. We see so many cases, so that causes a lot of physical and mental trauma and loss of reputation to the doctors. That is one of the biggest risks and threat that doctors are facing these days. Another threat can be your lawsuits, where medical negligence or a malpractice, knowingly or unknowingly, it has caused any damage. So when a lawsuit comes into the picture, your personal your personal what do you say, a mistake or a failure should not affect your families and your dependents thing, right? So dependents overall well-being, right? So that is one of the risks that comes with the profession. So a doctor's health is also very important and is at a great risk of contracting diseases and facing physical and emotional burnouts or breakdowns, right? So that is also another professional risk that is very very specific to doctors. And how do we manage that? Managing your online reputation, your reviews. This is very important for any professional who is into own practice, but more so for doctors, because yes, because one is coming to you, trusting you with their life, and they want to do all kinds of back checks and look at reviews and consult people and go through a reference kind of a thing. If somebody has referred a good doctor, one would like to approach that doctor. So things like that. So managing your reputation, especially your online reputation, is also very important, and that is also one of the risks that one should manage. So what happens among all of these risks? One more professional risk. What happens is, many times people see these risks of a doctor or a medical professional as an opportunity for themselves. Sometimes there are patients with a not so good mindset, who wants to just file a legal suit to just for harass and just make some money and be opportunistic about it. So, or to just avoid medical bills for that matter. So these are your professional risks as a doctor, which make it very different for you in the matter of financial planning, in the matter of risk management. Apart from that, a doctor also faces some of the personal risks. This is there in everybody's life, but yes, let's look at what are these. One is a risk to assets, wealth, property for reasons beyond our control, whether it is a natural calamity, a disaster, or something like that. Creditors, if you have taken a big loan to set up your practice, to set up your business, or if you have purchased a house or a villa and you have a big loan, and you have creditors and banks to whom you're liable to, so that is also a risk. And in today's world, divorce has become very common. So in the time of divorce, what are how do you protect your assets? If the other party, if the spouse is kind of not what do you say, responsible when it comes to your asset management, right? Sometimes there is someone is a spendthrift and you do not want to give away your assets, and you want to retain it for your, to pass it on to your children or your other dependent siblings, and things like that. So whatever the case, whatever the case may be, there are different cases. It has to be dealt with case to case. But in the case of divorce, how you can protect your assets and you can protect your practice is one area that we need to address. So, looking at all these risks, there are a few tools and techniques which are there available, and which can mitigate or reduce the risk to a large extent. So one is insurance of all kinds. There are insurance of all kinds, and we are going to see all the types of insurance for your practice, for your assets, and for your health and things like that. Insurance is very important. That is the first. Second comes your reputation management, like I was saying, your online presence, how that can be managed and dealt with. Asset protection strategies. What could be that asset protection strategies, like real estate, whether it is real estate, whether it is your share investments, whether it is your any financial investments, how you can protect them. Um, and then a will. How how will can be used to reduce the risk, and what is the importance of a will, when to have a will, and a trust. Then comes a trust, setting up a trust, right? So when can one consider a trust, whether it is a feasible option or not? What are the costs involved? How it can be used? And estate planning. After all, estate planning, in the sense which one to go with, whether it's a will or trust. How do you manage your estate planning or a succession planning if you have a business to pass on to, and things like that, right? So first things first, let's look at on managing online reputation. So there's a survey which was conducted, and about 84 to 85% of the patients use online reviews to determine their choice of physicians. This is very common these days. Anybody who wants to consult, whether it is orthopedic or a gynecologist or any even a general physician, people would like to go online and look for a review for everything. We it has become a very common practice to go and look for a review, and any one negative comment or one negative review for a doctor, it could be very personal also. Sometimes it could be genuine also, but how do you deal with that? So that is very important, right? So that is what is the general observation is that um, so a lot of professions use online thing, like Google reviews and things like that. But doctors as such, more than 70 to 80% of the doctors are not handling the online presence in the way it should be. Like, of course, they do not have the time to do all those things, but then one has to do it if they have a own practice, or they're planning to establish themselves as doctors in a city or a town. So online presence matters a lot. So what are the some of the tips to manage your online presence is, there are a lot of reputation management companies who provide these services. There are digital marketing companies, social media marketing companies who offer these services for a paid fee for a fee, basically. So they manage everything. They try to address, they try to highlight, if there is a very very negative comment, how do you address that? and at least there is someone to look after that in your absence, right? So who is also in consultation with you. How do you modulate what words to use and how to put it across and how to acknowledge what was done was, what has happened, and how do you rectify those things, right? So you might not be, as a person, you might not be able to be there at the time, but if you have a service kind of a thing who can look after your thing, and if it makes good sense and good outcome for you and your practice, it is worth having, such a management. Having said that, if you want to do it on your own, these are the tips one should follow. You should assess your current standing. Like, typically it's a 5-star rating, so you have to look at how many stars ratings you have got throughout till today, and if it is good, why it is good; if it is bad, why it is bad. You have to assess it. uh, Another important thing is to ask for reviews. It is always good if you are just establishing yourself as a medical practitioner, a doctor, or a specialist, and if you're there just a few years into the business, it's not a bad idea to ask for reviews from your patients. So any reviews, and it will help you also to understand and improvise, right? So improve your website. If you have a website, you should keep it up to date. Having it up to date is very important. Claim and verify your Google business listing. Okay, you have to keep verifying, keep being there, and keep looking at how do you keep looking whenever you search, whenever a person searches on the Google, you should make sure that your name is coming and standing out among the top 5 or top 6 or top 10, right? Build your social media profile. For example, LinkedIn is a very good professional portal that one can use. So your social media presence and being up to date and things like that will matter as a reputation management. um, Not responding to reviews is one thing one certainly should not do. You have to acknowledge and you have to respond. That gives a lot of transparency to the people out there, that yes, this is being addressed and this is something very genuine, right? Become a thought leader. So keep posting stuff related to your profession, or something which a common man could understand, not necessarily a very high funda kind of a thing. A day-to-day person who is looking up for you or your practice, or your wants to consult for the kind of ailment, let's say specific ailment. So put some thoughts there, and which can highlight your specialization. Consider the impact of healthcare professional communication, right? So all of this matters. How do you communicate what you're capable of? How do you communicate what is important for a person? For example, we are in a profession of financial advisory. For us, bringing awareness about financial planning is very important, because we see that financial planning helps an individual manage their personal finance in a better way, and a much better way. So most of our topics are surrounded or focused around financial planning. We try to bring in financial planning in some or the other way, to connect the dots, because that is a whole gist of having a good financial health, right? So like that, how do you communicate to people about being how maintaining their good health? If you're an orthopedic, how do you maintain your bone health properly, your muscle health properly? How can this help you? How can that help you? So something around that, keep posting and putting your communication there. Building a strong team. Yes, you should have a very strong team who helps you in and out. So uh, having a system in place is always important, right, for your practice. And the thing is, you have to be very proactive when you have a online presence. All this to ensure that there is a trust built online, and there is credibility, there is transparency. People who are not your patients can be your potential patients in future. So your online presence has to be up to date and accurate and very, very transparent. Now, the next thing that we should look at is the different types of insurances. One is the life insurance. Of course, we all know if something happens to you, the family should get, should have an amount which can suffice them and their goals, especially if you have younger children and their educations are taken care. So, life insurance is very important. Having adequate life insurance There is no two way about it. Any professional, one should have a life insurance. This is a must for anybody, right? And what is the life cover one should have? One might, it's a basic thumb rule that you should have 10 times of your annual income as your, life insurance, health insurance. As doctors, I need not stress more on having a health insurance. You all know how, how things can end up in a hospital, right? So or it is always good to have a comprehensive health insurance cover for yourself, your family, in which which covers critical illness and things like that. Permanent or partial disability insurance. As any professionals, doctors also ignore the chances of becoming permanent or partially disabled, right? So, permanent or partial disability insurance is also one of the important aspects one should consider. So, see, life is very uncertain. You all know it better than anybody else, right? So, there could be an accident, right? Just falling down from the stairs, some lift mishap happening, or accident, road accident, your four-wheeler accident or a bike accident. So it can leave you impaired partially or permanently, where you're not able to go and um, conduct your duties, conduct your work, right? What In those situations, you should have a cover which can not only give you a lump sum at that point of a time to take your treatment, but it should also protect your income in a way. So that is permanent or partial disability insurance. Income protection, this is something where you are making arrangements with the help of insurance products to create a passive stream of income for yourself and your family. This is used more these days for retirement planning also by the doctors who have self practice and who do not have other retirement buckets like provident fund, EPF, and things like that. So income protection is also important. Loan insurance. If you have a home loan or a personal loan, protecting it with insurance is very important. Of course, it is a cost to you, but then in the event of uncertain and untoward events, you will not put your family under pressure and under financial stress if something happens to you because of this loan. So protecting your loan with the insurance is also very important, especially so because doctors invest so much for their practice, like equipments and things like that, which are very expensive. And also a house. Uh, you have earned so much, and you have a kind of a lifestyle. Doctors have good lifestyle, so you will be having a good amount of home loans. How do you protect your home loan? So you have to protect your home loans, right, with the insurance product. So these are the important ones. Now, to give you an example, or one might come to me and ask that what could be a typical premium amount for a life insurance. So here I've given like two examples here for pure term plans, right? Pure term insurances for a 40-year-old doctor. Wife is around 35 years old and a child about 7 to 8 years old. So that is a family that I've just considered for my examples in the future also. So this is a term insurance for a 40-year-old doctor. So for a 1 crore policy, up to 65 years if you want to cover. So the premium comes to around in the range of 30 to 35,000. It depends on different policy providers. So here you can see that there are different features that are mentioned here. Okay, so here there is a waiver of premium cover. So if there is a detection or a diagnosis of a terminal illness, or there is a impairment or a disability due to accident, so in those cases some policies waive off the future premiums and the policy will continue. The company pays the premiums on behalf of the customer, and the policy continues to be in force, and upon death the family will get the insurance cover. So that is one of the features one should look at. Another important feature is 100% payout on terminal illness. So here it is written that free. That means no additional premium needs to be paid here. So this is free of cost. So in case there is a critical illness or a terminal illness detected, diagnosed going forward in the future, right? It could be a cancer or something like that. So the company pays you 100% of your sum assured on the diagnosis of such illness, and that is one time. And the policy continues, and on death, one more lump sum will be paid to the family. So that is one of the important features. You can also have critical illness riders here, on paying a little bit extra premium. About so many critical illnesses will be covered. So you'll have to look for, whether, what you want to cover, how comprehensively you want to cover the critical illness. If you see that there is something in the family history and you could be at a, risk of contracting such a illness, so you can choose this. Extra payout on accidental death. So if you if you choose this rider on paying this, some additional premium, you'll also get an additional extra payout the family will get on if there is an accidental death, right? So these are some of the features. Another similar features are here. You can see extra payout on accidental disability. There is a disability benefit within the term cover. So these are some of the riders, one has to be aware that these are available and opt for it if you have not done so. This is like, a built-in, having everything in one place kind of a thing, but separate covers are also available. Separate critical illness policies are available, separate accidental death policies are available, so separate, permanent and disability insurances are available separately, right? If you have missed it out, maybe you can have it as a rider on your next premium, or you can have a separate cover. Professional indemnity insurance. This is very, very important. Any profession should have a professional indemnity insurance. People who are doctors, medical practitioners, engineers, financial advisors, CAs, lawyers. Lot of professions, use this as a protection, right? What all it covers? It covers professional negligence. If there is a lawsuit, right, against, some negligence, let's say medical negligence, things like that, the policy will cover, your lawyer expenses, whatever expenses are coming out of the lawsuit, right? Loss of goods or money. This is in case of, some other professions. Unintentional breach of confidentiality or copyright. Claim investigation expenses, right? So whatever investigations, whatever related expenses are there relating out of your, which are coming straight from your medical negligence, or the cause of the lawsuit or things like that. For example, defamation cases and things like that. All those are covered. What is exempted is any criminal acts, any intentionally done acts is not covered. Frauds and other violations which are not as per compliance, which has happened due to negligence or a mistake or a failure, those are covered. But if it is intentional, it is not covered. Being under the influence of drugs or alcohol, if this has happened, then that is not covered. Contractual liability. If under a contract, if you are liable to pay someone and you have not done that, and you cannot be covered under professional indemnity because that was your liability and you had to do it. Act of war or terrorism, yes, any damage happening or coming because of these issues, it is not covered. Insolvency of a person with indemnity insurance. Going bankrupt. When you go bankrupt, not because of your professional thing, you cannot claim your professional indemnity insurance. The professional indemnity insurance is basically protecting you from any damages or any claims that may come to you because of your professional wrongdoing or mistakes or something like that. Only that. So what are the kind of premiums that a company could charge for a professional indemnity insurance? Here I've taken an example of a general physician for a 50 lakhs of cover. So it again depends on company to company, provider to provider. So it is in the range of like say starts as low as 1,000 rupees and goes up to 7,000-8,000 rupees. It depends on the complexity of what all is covered, not covered, and even the coverage amount also, right? So here you can see that what all is covered is already given, and bodily injury caused by negligence, death of any patient caused, legal liability, legal charges will be paid out of this policy. legal costs and expenses, coverage for support staff. If you have a establishment and a staff needs to be covered, so that is also covered in case a lawsuit is filed against you and you're unable to pay their salaries and things like that. So these are covered. So basically, what we are trying to say here is you should be aware of what your policy is capable of covering and what it excludes also, right? So whenever you're looking for a life insurance, a health insurance, or professional indemnity insurance, you should always be aware of all the terms and conditions. You should read all the small fonts, whatever is there in the policy, and you should consult your advisor or someone who can help you through this, who can customize and bring you some products which are perfectly suiting your requirements, and you can choose between that, right? So yeah, now we are moving to asset protection. So this was all about using your insurances for your risk management. Now let's look at asset protection. How do you safeguard your assets and properties? What is the goal is to safeguard one's wealth from potential financial threats, losses, for example, to minimize exposure to lawsuits. Your personal property can become one can have a claim on your personal property when there is a lawsuit, right? How do you mitigate that? How do you minimize that? Limit your personal liability. This is simply put, how do you avoid paying out of pocket, straight out of pocket, and by pledging your assets and things like that? How do you limit those personal liabilities? Ultimately, how do you preserve the assets that are built with hard-earned money for such a long time? And how can it be passed to future generations? Why is asset protection important for doctors? It is important for doctors who have private practice because the risk of malpractice claims are more for doctors who have a private practice, and they are also an attractive target. Like I was mentioning in my earlier slides, that people see this as an opportunity to make some money, to harass and be opportunistic there. So potentially they know that doctors earn very well. They make a lot of money and they want to make the most of it. A small situation also can be blown up into something disastrous. So these are the things why it is very important for doctors. How can you use insurance as an asset protection strategy? This is one of the strategies, and we'll look at other strategies also in our upcoming slides. You can have general insurances for, like, just like, see, one has a car insurance because it is mandatory, but it is also important to protect your home, right? Protect against damage to house property by having your homeowners insurance. If your property is of a significant value, it makes sense to have a homeowners insurance. Automobile insurance, of course, this is mandatory. It should it should cover the damages to vehicle and liability claims if there is any accident and things like that. You should ensure that. Life insurance. One more important thing is umbrella insurance. What is umbrella insurance? It is another kind of insurance policy which covers everything, right? For example, let's say there is a car accident and the cover is for, let's say, 75,000 rupees, but the damages are to the extent of more than 1 lakh, right? Your policy will pay you up to 75. What will you do with the rest of the amount? So there you can use umbrella insurance policy to claim those kind of claims or charges, right? So having an umbrella insurance also ensures complete protection, whatever the case may be. It protects any leftover damages or claims can be claimed from umbrella insurances. Now, other strategies for asset protection, we will look at trust first. Creating a trust. So here, how can trust be used to protect one's assets? So before we begin, discussing on trusts and things, if somebody is new to this concept, younger, if there's a young doctor who is trying to set up a practice, who is unaware of a trust, I just thought, let me just brief what is a trust. It is nothing but a legal agreement where you appoint a person who is called a trustee, whether he or she is from your family or a person who you really trust with your assets, right? You appoint them to manage your assets or property for the benefit of some other family members according to your directions, right? So that is what a trust is. It's a legal arrangement where a trustee manages the assets or properties for the benefit of a beneficiary. Beneficiary is the person for whom these assets or incomes or financial assets are meant to be used for. For example, let's say a person has young children, and he or she creates a trust and appoints some person within the family to manage the assets on my behalf, to pass on the benefits of my property to my children until they become an age where they understand these things. So till then, the trustee manages the assets and passes on all the things that are meant to be as per my wishes and desires. So that is a trust. So what are the parties in a trust? Settler is a person who is creating the trust. That is called as the settler. And he or she creates a trust. And he or she appoints a trustee. A trustee is a person who will be managing the assets on your behalf, on the settler's behalf, going forward. And he or she is also responsible for distribution or, doing whatever with the assets in hand as per the intention or the objective of the trust deed. And then there are beneficiaries for whom this trust has been made. So trust is usually, let me tell you, when the trust comes into the picture, in most of the cases when there are specially abled children or children with special needs. So in those cases, parents usually have a trust created, and very important in those cases, right? So how they want, because the children might not be, in a state to, understand and manage things on their own. So they will choose a trusted person who can manage on their behalf, in their presence or in their absence, and do it in the way it is meant to be for the children. So that is all about trust. So when should you really consider setting up a trust? You should ask these questions to yourself, if you want to understand when a trust comes into a picture. What do I want to achieve, and what options do I have to achieve, to these objectives? Like, what is the objective of me setting up a trust? So when do people usually set up trusts? So people set up trusts when, when there is a lawsuit filed against them, and they want to isolate their personal assets, from the claims of any lawsuit. In some cases where they have huge loans, whether it's for business purpose or for personal purpose, and they want to set aside when they feel that they are at a risk of losing out some of the personal assets, and they want to ensure that their children don't suffer because of this, right? So they set up a trust and pass on the assets to the trust for the benefit of their dependent children. So those are some of the examples. So what is your objective? What do you want to achieve out of setting up a trust? Will answer whether you should have a trust or not. And second most important thing is, will I get value out of a trust? See, creating a trust legally and as per compliance, it involves a lot of costs, right? It is a costly affair. So after spending so much and after having all the hassles of doing it, the paperwork and things like that, so is it adding value to me, right? So this is a very important thing. Only if it is adding value to you and your dependents, your family members, you should have a trust. So the main objectives can be looked at in these points is for seamless transfer of wealth to intended beneficiaries, where you want to pass on your legacy, where you want to pass on your assets to your, let's say, dependent siblings, dependent parents, dependent children, right? So you can pass it on with the trust. So trust is something which can come into the picture even when you're alive. And you can also be one of the trustees for that matter. And you can have a second trustee, a third trustee, 2 to 3 trustees you can have, right? So it's that is one of the intentions or objectives. For family business owners, it is important to separate the ownership of business and the right to income from these businesses And so a trust structure would be one of the best intergenerational wealth transfer mechanisms. So if you want to if you want someone to handle your business incomes or incomes from your real estate properties, right, to manage it in a way how you want it to be managed in your presence or in your absence also. So you can have set up a trust where generation to generation it keeps on happening the same way as per your objectives. This is all this is done mainly when there is a lot of wealth and assets which have come as an inheritance and are getting passed on as an inheritance. So in those cases, this will be very important and very, very cost effective and a very good tool or mechanism to have to protect assets, to prevent the erosion of family wealth by future generations and beneficiaries. See, our future generations might not be as responsible as we are, or they might end up in a relationship or a bad marriage, and that could, end up in, the asset being at a risk and things like that. So you can protect and have clauses in your trust where you are protecting your assets, by any future, wrongdoings or treating the assets being treated in a wrong way by your future generations, right? So those are the things. Asset protection in case of a divorce. What happens in the case of a divorce? So in divorce, what happens? So there is claim on each other's properties and assets and money. Of course, alimony and things like that will be there. But then when it comes to personal assets, those are also at your stake. So what you in a trust, you can also have such conditions like which prevents your spouse from claiming any entitlement in the fund, because you have specified the beneficiaries as maybe your children or your family members, the way you want it to be, your hard-earned assets, how you want it to be. The aim is to also preserve wealth by isolating such assets beyond the reach of potential creditors or from the law or things like that. So you can also protect, like I was saying, you can also save the assets from your child's bad marriage too. In the future generations, how you can protect your thing. So trust will have a lot of options for you to write it down, have a trust deed. So when you're setting up a trust, you will have to write a trust deed which details the outline, and all the details are involved, who manages and to whom the benefits are passed, point wise, all the assets wise, branching out to a lot of things, right? So it can be very, very detailed, and you can ensure 100% safety and security, and 100% as per your wishes and desires. You can have it done legally, right? What are the different types of trusts? As per structure, we have two types of trust. That is, one is private trust and public trust. Private trust is something which families use. Public trust is something which is out there for the benefit of the society. For example, charitable trust, a temple trust, or something like that. As per asset accessibility, it can be a revocable trust or a irrevocable trust. A revocable trust is something which can be changed once the trust is created. In future, if there are any changes, a change can be made in a revocable trust. In an irrevocable trust, changes cannot be made. Once the trust is created, that is the final. So usually private trusts are irrevocable trusts. Family trusts are irrevocable, and one has to take care of all the measures, all the aspects before finalizing the trust deed. So more on private family trusts. Why are private family trusts being used? When you have special needs, children or special needs people who needs to be taken care in your absence, right? So as doctors, you all face a lot of a threat, like I was saying, coming to the health, your mental well-being. It could be anything, leading to your death and things like that. So in your absence also, when you want to ensure that your special needs dependents are taken care appropriately with respect, so a trust will be a very good option. Charitable giving. If let's say in these generations, the younger generations, I have created some webinars there also where people choose to be single as choose to be singles. they don't want to have a family and things like that, and they don't have dependents also going forward. So but they have good amount of, we have a couple of clients who are in this zone, who earn very well, who are CXOs and very renowned doctors and things like that, who are earning quite well. They are setting up trusts for charity purposes, right? So that can be one aspect. um, so other things we have discussed already, like if you have to protect your assets from your spendthrift beneficiaries who is who recklessly spend your who that someone is reckless about spending and managing assets. So you can protect your assets from such people in your family, right? Creditors, lawsuits. If you have made a high risk investment in some let's say for example a startup, which is a high risk project, and you have invested, and you think that it might go bad. It could happen, right? As a precaution, you want to ensure that if it goes bad, your personal assets or some part of your assets are protected, and you can have a trust. So what happens usually when you have a trust is, once you transfer your asset to the trust, no one can lay a hand on them. It is totally isolated and free from legal judgments and creditors, and so it is completely protected. So in India, what are the different types of trusts we have? We have revocable trusts, irrevocable trusts, charitable, special needs trust, generation skipping trust. If you want to skip a generation, you can have a trust for that. Life insurance trust, where a trust is created to manage the life insurance proceedings. How do you want your life insurance to be distributed? So you can have a trust for that. A spendthrift trust. This is like that your children are spendthrift, and how do you want to manage your pass on your assets and things like that. So having said that, a trust is a very it is a kind of a complex matter and very very subjective in nature. So it is always advisable to consult a lawyer or a financial advisor before proceeding on these. So the Indian Trust Act of 1882 governs the creation and operations of trusts in India. So there are a lot of parameters, involved in creating a trust, right? So it creates, the documentation is there. All the parties have to sign the documents. Income tax things are there. So, it's a very complex subject matter. So in the market, there are a lot of companies who provide trust services, and these are some of them, right? So they charge a fee, a good amount of fee, because yes, end of the day, they're also in the business, right? But what do you get from these? Having if your assets are considerably large and complex, and your family structure is complex, it makes sense to have a professional trustee, a corporate trustee, or one can do with having the trustee within the family. Now, one might ask, why are we looking at trusts in so much detail? What is the difference between a will and a trust, right? So the main difference is, the will comes into effect only after your death, but a trust can be created. A trust can be created and managed in a way in your presence also. Like I was saying, you can also be one of the trustees in the will. So, a will is a legal document that spells out how you want your affairs to be handled and assets to be distributed after you die. Whereas a trust is an arrangement whereby you are giving the legal right to the trustee to hold and manage the assets for the benefit of the specific purpose or person, right? So, this is the main objective of a trust. So, what happens is, usually a trust comes into effect as a part of a will. Maybe some person has written a will and wants to create a trust. So trust can be a outcome of a will also in some cases. So these are the things. So basically, the bottom line is that if your assets and your requirements and your objectives are very very simple, right? It's better you go with the will, because it's not that complex and complicated. But if it is beyond a certain stage where it gets complicated and you don't know, a lot of ifs and buts are there, it is better to have a trust, but you have to consult the proper professionals before doing so. So in the will, what happens is, you can just have it in your writing also. It's very important. So most of the times what happens is, if there is an accident, and a will has to be created when a person is of sound mind, and he or she is competent. So if there is a sudden accident and there is a damage to your head, and you're not in a situation to even sign any document, then that becomes a very big challenge. So it is always advisable that any person should write a will in his or her own handwriting, and just which outlines a basic framework how you want your assets to be passed on or managed, or how you want you or yourself to be also treated, treated, or who can take decisions on your behalf, if something happens to you and you are incapacitated. So all that can be a part of a will. So it is very important as a step one to have a will, right? If it is becoming very complex, then we can go to the next level of creating a trust. Another important aspect of asset protection is your retirement planning. See, for everything else, you get loans, and but for retirement, you don't have a plan B or a backup kind of a thing. So you should not delay planning for your retirement. I have given a small example here how delaying will cost you more, right? There's a doctor who is 35, and his wife is a homemaker, and their child studies in class 4. Okay. The expected retirement age is 60 and life expectancy is 85. This is the average. Your current annual expenses are coming to about 60K per month, that is 7.2 lakhs per year. Inflation is about 7%, which is assumed, and post retirement return is about 8%. So, with all of these aspects, the corpus that you would need at the age of 60 will be around 8.7 crores. It looks quite high, but as a result of inflation, that is what it is. So, if he starts saving at the age of 35, at these rates, different rates of return, these are the amounts required on a monthly basis that he will need to save. As he delays it by 10 years, look at the requirements, it becomes more and more, right? So, cost of delay is too much. Doctors are in a profession where most of the times they are not, see, for one thing, when important thing is their profession, and income starts very late when compared to other professionals, right? So when a doctor starts thinking seriously about his or her financial plan and retirement plans is at the age of 40, where you have almost around say 15 years have gone. So there's already a delay, and causing any more further delay will cost you even more. So you will have to create a retirement plan, identifying what are the kind of expenses you would expect in the future, and extrapolating it with inflation into the future, and trying to arrive at the corpus that you will need in the future, and what is the savings that you want to make right from now till you retire, is very important. So there was a survey conducted by Morningstar, which showed that people underestimate the size of their retirement corpus a lot. Up to 40% of them, underestimate their corpus. So let's look at some of the mistakes doctors should avoid, right? So one is failing to act. One is failing to know and manage all your risks, not just malpractice, right? Uh, Adhering to compliance. This is very important for any profession for that matter. Even financial advisors have to adhere to a lot of compliance from SEBI, and so do doctors also. So adhering to not failure to adhering to compliance in business practice is has to be avoided. Identifying your personal and your business risks is very important, and how do you mitigate those risks? That is very important. Relying only on insurance is again a mistake. Please understand that insurance is just one part of it, and there is much more to protect your risks. You have to protect your income streams. See, a doctor there's no end to a doctor's uh, practice. You can practice as long as you want, and if your health permits, it goes on and on, right? So, but you should understand that life is very uncertain, and you have to protect these streams of income. And what can you do? You should have the right kind of tools. These are the 5 steps doctors must take. One is create the will. create a will. Like I was saying, if you have a own practice, whether uh, how do you want to have the ownership, if something happens, if you're incapacitated, or if there's a disability, you're not able to work. So how your practice should be handled, whether it should be sold or transferred, or whether it should be closed and you will be doing something else, or things like that. That's just an example, and how your assets should be distributed after your death. So that is a will. You should have it. A person can have a will, create a will, that is called a living will, which will also come into effect when one is alive. The second is a power of attorney. So this is a very important points that I would like to highlight here. So to manage the finances of a doctor who is alive but incapacitated, so you have to identify a person within your family, or your, a person whom you trust to give this power of attorney, uh, to take care of situations when you are mentally not able to take decisions for yourself, right? So many a times what happens is, tell you a live a case where we have a client who is around 40-45 years old, a very wealthy client, right? He's a cycling enthusiast, and once when he was cycling, an accident happened, and he was injured on his head. And suddenly he was into coma, and something like that, right? So then of course there will be somebody who will take these decisions of a surgery or anything, family members, if parents are there. But I'm just saying situations can come up. So having a power of attorney, you have to identify whether there is a need or what is the kind of a need. So having a power of attorney is important. It also grants authority to the designated person to control what happens when with the practice, when the owning doctor is unable to perform his or her duties. What happens to your practice? If you have your own practice, a business, and things like that. So what happens if you are not in a state for some period of time to take charge or to look into the affairs, right? So medical POA designates someone to make healthcare decisions for you. Like for example, surgery. A surgery has happened, and you're not in a situation to give a go ahead or understand that an additional surgery is required. So these are different kinds of scenarios. So power of attorney is one thing one should consider. 5 steps. Another 3 steps are create a trust, if that is making sense to you and your family and your assets. Go ahead and consult a lawyer, a financial advisor to create this trust. Protect incomes using passive income tools like income plans. There are insurance policies which provide incomes in the future. The setup is like you pay premiums for let's say 5 years or 10 years from now, and you leave it there for 1 or 2 years more, and then from the 13th or 14th year you want the incomes to come to you. That can be one kind of a plan. Another kind of a plan is you say that I'm going to pay the premiums only for 5 years, and then I leave it there for another 5 years. I want the incomes to come to me or my family after 10 years from now. So that can be one. So these are some passive income ideas. As a savings also, as an investment also, you can protect your incomes, or have a passive stream of income, which will take care in cases of if in case you are disabled, or in case you don't want to work any longer, you want to just have a passive income coming to take care of your basic necessities. You can have these kind of income protection plans. Having adequate indemnity insurance is a must. So please do not ignore the importance of having an indemnity insurance, especially doctors. So we have seen all the parameters and strategies and tools and techniques. So let me take you just quickly through the how do you build your financial pyramid. This is very important. So if you see your life insurance, your emergency fund management, your risk management, your estate planning, that is your will and your trust, your disability income replacement, and your long-term care plan is at the foundation of all of this. So you have to ensure that these things are taken care, which are the base for your asset protection and your safeguarding of your practice and your assets, right? So having these in hand, in proper place will ensure that you are protected in a better way, you and your assets, right? Next comes your savings, retirement savings, systematic investments, and your tax planning. So that is also very important. Then how do you plan for your children's education and accelerated mortgage reduction? That is, you would have taken, loans for your practice, to set up your hospital, or to build your home. So how do you plan to prepay and repay them over a certain period of time, so that the debt is repaid? And I also highlighted the fact that you should have a loan protector insurance, right? So those are the things. And then comes your wealth building and accumulation, wealth accumulation, your lifestyle spending and things like that. And after all this is achieved, and you are still left with a lot of assets which you can give away to the society as a charity, that can be planned, and a legacy which you can pass on to your generations, that also can be planned. This is how your typical financial pyramid looks like. So the protection area, the risk management is at the base of all of this. So you have to protect and take appropriate measures. So that was the end of our session today. So if you need customized advice on insurance, will, or estate planning, trust creation, your retirement planning, or complete 360-degree comprehensive financial planning, please contact us. And these are our services that we are doing since the last 20 years. Thank you very much for joining us today. And if the questions come to you a bit later, please feel free to write to us, and we'll have your queries answered. Or you can also get in touch with us on the phone, and we'll connect with you for your queries.